Hello, thank you for listening. This is the near death experience of Joseph, and this experience occurred in 2001, and this story was documented on January 13th, 2017. Open quote. It's been 16 years since my experience, and for many years I wasn't able to talk about it of fear of judgment. I'll do my best to remember as much detail as I can, although much knowledge has faded away at this point. I also need to state that although this NDE is associated with a psychedelic drug experience, I urge you to not discredit my story. I hold to the firm belief that what I experienced was a bona fide NDE that still has a profound effect on me to this day. I was a freshman in college and living in campus dorms with 3 other guys. It's safe to say that I was in my experimental phase. One day, 2 of my friends asked if I wanted to eat psychedelic mushrooms with them. After much deliberation, I was curious about the experience. I trusted them, so I agreed. Up to that point, alcohol and cannabis were the only other drugs that I'd tried. I was completely ignorant about how much of a dose to take, so I asked my friends. I ended up buying a large baggie, half full of the mushrooms, and proceeded to eat most of the bag. I remember my friends' dumbfounded faces as I just kept popping in little mushrooms like popcorn into my mouth. I figure now that I ended up taking up to around 5 to 6 grams of dried psilocybin mushrooms that day. That was well over any recreational dose. After I had eaten all of the mushrooms, my friends left me with my roommates, assuring that they would return in a few minutes. My roommates did not take any drugs. As I waited for my friends to return and for the mushroom trip to begin, I sat with one of my roommates playing video games on our dorm room sofa. After about 30 to 45 minutes, I could start to feel the effects taking place. The colors on the TV became more vivid. My motor skills were slowing down. Rational thought became much harder, and I started to sense an audible vibration coming from somewhere. From this point on, I pieced my story together with what I was experiencing and what I learned later from my roommates. The vibration brought on a wave of extreme laughter. As I sat there on the couch laughing with a lit cigar in my hand, I started having a seizure. My entire body straightened out. I rolled over onto my stomach and cigar, and then rolled onto my back again while shaking uncontrollably. I don't remember the seizure. What I do remember is a sensation of floating in the room I was in. I was having an out-of-body experience. The sensation was less of a physical feeling and more of an awareness that I was floating in the room. I didn't feel attached to my body. It was as if my soul was free and filling up the room. I don't recall seeing my body, but I knew it was there below me. The feeling was that I was lifting up toward the ceiling. At that point, I remember the feeling of being transported or attracted to something. I could see that I was surrounded by darkness and being pulled into a light at the end of the tunnel. The whole time, I felt like I was on my back being lifted up. I don't recall any sounds or feeling any uncomfortable feelings like fear or anxiety. I remember feeling very calm and relaxed. While moving toward the light, time and space seemed to slip away, but I remember the lack of time being very significant. I couldn't tell you how long it took me to move into the light, but once I arrived, it was as if I had always been there. Light was everywhere, but it didn't seem to have a source. There were no other landscape details to see. It was almost as if the light was a physical thing. It was the ground and the sky all at the same time, or it was none of that. I still felt like I was on my back. I was greeted by 3 entities standing above me. They were standing side by side, with the one in the middle being taller than the others. The middle one had more than a larger physical presence. It was as if it were important in rank, like the leader. It had a very strong Virgin Mary vibe. So from here on, I'll refer to it as she. I don't know if I believe that it was the Virgin Mary or not, but the presence was very feminine and motherly, and that's what matters to me. All of the entities appeared to be dressed in long robes. The robes draped over their heads, like in the pictures depicting Virgin Mary in popular art. Although their forms drew fine silhouettes, no other details could be made out. I could not see faces, fabric, or anything like that. It was as if they were just energetic holograms. They had a softness to them, like a glow. The one in the middle seemed to be reaching out her hands to me as if she was welcoming me. I think she was communicating with me, but I don't remember any of those details. I do know that the communication came through as forms of telepathy, since she wasn't speaking. Where was I? Where was I being welcomed to? The best that I can explain it is that I was home. This awareness was primarily due to what I was feeling, which is best explained by what I wasn't feeling. I wasn't feeling anxiety, which I realized during this moment that I had struggled with a lot. I was not feeling any pain, fear, or desires. All of these things seeming so trivial and small since they were only experienced during a human experience, which I was clearly not having at this moment. I felt complete peace and acceptance. I felt all knowledge or truth. I could feel the infinite. I was infinite. I'm struggling to find words to express this sensation, but for me, this sense of awareness was profound. I believe I relived my entire life in one instance. Everything seemed to be revealed to me at once. I don't know what those entities are or were. They didn't seem to be anyone that I had met before, like deceased relatives, but I felt very safe with them, even though I didn't feel that I was one of them. They felt separate from me, but not in an earthly, judgmental kind of way, because there was no judgment. If this was heaven, it wasn't the heaven I was taught about in Bible school. There were no streets paved in gold or winged creatures flying around. There was only love and wisdom. And I had a feeling that it was for everyone, not just believers. At some point, I slipped back into my earthly body and back into chaos. I don't remember any goodbyes, parting thoughts, or even a choice to leave. I just opened my eyes and was back. From this point on, the NDE was over and I was back in my body and not quite normal. I was hallucinating very, very heavily. I was very confused at this point. I couldn't even focus on the profoundness that had just happened because I was in such a state of chaos. I remember looking around the room and seeing one of my roommates in the outside doorway to the dorm staring at me in shock and fear, muttering expletives. The other roommate was already out the door and outside. I could hear him yelling, "Call 911! Call 911!" At this point, I was very worried since I didn't know what had physically happened to me. I was in a state of declining fear and confusion, but I somehow was able to convince both my roommates that no authorities needed to be called. The rest of the story is significant to my life journey, but it is nonetheless just another trip story. For the purpose of this website, I will end the story here. Let's just say that I had two very soul-level, deep experiences happen to me that day that I've been trying to make sense of ever since. Sharing this with you helps me get one step closer to understanding what happened. End quote. Well, you never know exactly who your dorm room roommates will be and what they will do. But that was a very interesting story and some great descriptions there. I thought that his description of the three entities were pretty great, pretty cool. It was as if they were energetic holograms. They had a softness to them like a glow. and his explanation of where he was, that he was home, and the peace and the acceptance that he felt there. And there are some questions. Let me see. Question: at the time of your experience, was there an associated life-threatening event? Answer: uncertain. Is a drug overdose, extremely high dose of psilocybin mushrooms, illness, trauma, or other conditions not considered life-threatening? I don't think it was life-threatening, but I was experiencing a seizure during my NDE. Medical assistance was not administered nor required. Question: how do you consider the content of your experience? Answer: entirely pleasant. And rating your consciousness? Answer: I felt like all knowledge was being passed through me at once because time didn't exist. My awareness was at a level of clarity unattainable during the human experience because our emotions get in the way. Question: did time seem to speed up or slow down? Answer: I could feel infinity. It was as if I was completely aware of how long I had been there and the absence of time altogether at the same time, if that makes sense. I remember being surprised later when I learned I was only out for 30 seconds or less. Questions: comparing your vision. Answer: my vision during seemed unbound by a physical body and was much more tied into an intuitive sensation devoid of time and space. That said, vision before and after my experience is all about the details of time and space. Things have gravity and mass in the human realm. In my experience, gravity, mass, and space did not exist. But that didn't make things less real. For example, the three entities I saw, they had form, but they were devoid of any details. I can't tell you what color they were, what their clothes were made of, or even if they had faces, but they had a strong, energetic presence. Question: comparing your sound. Answer: I heard a loud, audible buzzing of vibration. During the experience, I don't recall any sounds. Other than the vibration, I don't remember anything significant sound-wise about the experience. Question: did you pass into or through a tunnel? Answer: yes. My consciousness seemed to be floating separately from the confines of my body and in the room. I sensed myself as consciousness lifting upwards, like I was being attracted to something. I became aware of a bright light, and there was darkness surrounding me. I got closer to the light, and eventually it replaced the darkness, and that's when I was in the other realm, as I know it. I don't recall any sounds or negative feelings while in the tunnel. Question: did you see an unearthly light? Answer: yes. The light at the end of the tunnel that eventually surrounded me was bright and white, but not blinding. It didn't seem to have a source like a sun or other point of origin. Question: what emotions did you feel during the experience? Answer: I felt complete absence of pain, fear, sadness, loneliness, anxiety, or desires. I felt an overwhelming sense of acceptance, joy, peace, lightness, and love. I remember contrasting these feelings during my experience with those of the human experience and thinking, wow, I existed without any pain. I didn't even know I was in pain, but now I know that I have been. Question: did you suddenly seem to understand everything? Answer: it was as if the veil to truth had been lifted. It was understanding about myself and of everything at once. Question: did scenes from your past come back to you? Answer: unfortunately, I don't remember any of the details of this. I feel that at the time, everything was happening at once and forever at the same time, and nothing really stuck. I do remember a sensation of some kind of life review, though. Question: what importance did you place on your religious/spiritual life prior to your experience? Answer: slightly important. Question, what was your religion prior to your experience? Answer, Christian Protestant, not extremely religious, but growing up in the Bible Belt, Christianity was very much a part of my psyche. A year or so prior to my NDE, I had been baptized at a Baptist church. Question, have your religious practices changed since your experience? Answer, yes. Though it took me a while to break myself from my Christian upbringing, my beliefs now are very much shaped by what happened in my NDE. My spiritual truths start with that experience, and everything else I try to build around that. Question, what importance do you place on your religion/spiritual life after your experience? Answer, moderately important. Question, what is your religion now? Answer, other faiths, New Age. I no longer consider myself Christian, but am very spiritual, primarily a mix of New Age, pagan, and Eastern-derived religions like Buddhism and Taoism. Question, did your experience include features consistent with your earthly beliefs? Answer, though I was raised under Christian beliefs, I never fully thought that was the whole truth. It felt way too complicated and wrapped up in earthly desires and fears. Ever since I was a little boy, though, I felt connected to a greater whole. I've always been very in tune with nature and have always had great empathy for other people. My NDE seemed to confirm the beauty and oneness that we all are to everything and everyone. It seemed to confirm the simplicity of it all. It confirmed my Christian beliefs that there was some kind of afterlife with heavenly beings waiting for us, maybe the Virgin Mary herself. It challenged what I thought would happen about being judged and feeling fear of being judged. I didn't feel that there was any form of hell on the other side, which might have been the biggest challenger to my faith at the time. Question, did you have a change in your values and beliefs because of your experience? Answer, yes. I felt confirmation that we're all spiritual beings and that there is nothing to fear about the afterlife. There's nothing to do to get to heaven. There's no special invitation. We're all invited and will eventually get there. That was very confusing to me at the time and still is. Question, did you seem to encounter a mystical being or presence or hear an unidentifiable voice? Answer, I saw 3 beings standing over me as I felt like I was lying on my back. They stood side by side, and the one in the middle was taller and had a larger energetic presence. They all looked alike, other than the size difference. They each wore matching shrouds or cloaks that covered their bodies and heads. Although it did not cover their faces, I couldn't make out any visual details. They didn't seem to be physical bodies, but rather made up of energy. Their energies were female. I sensed a strong motherly presence. The one in the middle seemed to be communicating with me via telepathy. I think she was welcoming me and passing on some sort of universal knowledge, though I cannot recall any specifics. I just remember feeling very loved by these beings and a strong sense that I was home. I was at or near the source. I really wish I could remember if there were any tasks given to me. Question, did you encounter or become aware of any beings who previously lived on Earth who are described by name in religions? Answer, uncertain. As I stated above, the being in the middle had a Virgin Mary vibe, but I'm not certain that I was actually seeing her. It's funny, even though I was raised Christian, I wasn't Catholic. The Protestants don't worship the Virgin Mary like Catholics do. There's very little emphasis on Mary in those theologies. I thought it odd that I was seeing a being resembling her and not Jesus, for example. Question, during your experience, did you gain information about premortal existence? Answer, yes. I wasn't reliving any past lives or anything, but I felt that because time didn't exist in this realm, that I was experiencing and that I was... Let me read that one again. Yes, I wasn't reliving any past lives or anything, but I felt that because time didn't exist in this realm that I was experiencing, and that I was from here, that I too was infinite. Therefore, since my present life has a clear beginning and end, there must have been something prior to my life's start. Question. During your experience, did you gain information about universal connection or oneness? Answer. Uncertain. My experience was much more personal than universal, but I became aware of oneness. It's hard to explain how, I just felt it. Question. During your experience, did you gain information about the existence of God? Answer. Uncertain. In my experience, there was no God or singular supreme being. I did not feel any other spiritual force or awareness of that. I won't go as far as to say there is no God, but if I were to base my answer to the question, is there one God, based solely on my experience alone, I would say no. I say this because during that experience, it didn't seem important. I felt that I was important and not some supreme being. I felt like that idea of God is based on our earthly desires and fears and not in any kind of actual truth. Question. Do you believe in the existence of God after your experience? Answer. God probably exists. Question. During your experience, did you gain special knowledge or information about your purpose? Answer. Yes. I just felt that all of life had been revealed to me. I'm afraid I can't recall much of the specifics other than what I've already shared. Question. Did you believe that an earthly life are meaningful and significant prior to your experience? Answer. Yes. Question. During your experience, did you gain information about life's difficulties, challenges, and hardships? Answer. Yes. I felt that all of life's difficulties were tiny compared to the reality of the whole soul experience. All of the difficulties seemed unimportant, like none of it really matters. All of life at that point seemed so temporary and short. This seemed to be a lesson of comfort, to not get too wrapped up in the human experience, because on the other side, it will seem so unimportant. Question. During your experience, did you gain information about love? Answer. Yes. I learned that I was loved so infinitely much that we all are, no matter what we believe or what we do. Question. What life changes occurred in your life after your experience? Answer. The changes as a result of my NDE have been slow, but have increased significantly in the last 4 years. As I grow older and experience life, the more I think about my NDE. Because my NDE was also attached to a profound psychedelic experience, I, for many years following, felt ashamed of it or dismissed it in some way. I think because I was also young, age 18, when it happened, I didn't have the tools to integrate the learnings into my life. For a long time, I felt isolated and depressed. I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. But 2 years later, when my dad suddenly died, the experience became much more helpful in dealing with his death and how to proceed afterwards in my own life. Religiously, I'm still the skeptic that I've always been. I feel that most, if not all, major religions get it wrong about the afterlife and life's purpose. That said, I'm confirmed that we are all spiritual beings and that there is a higher purpose now. Question. Have your relationships changed specifically because of your experience? Answer. Uncertain. It's hard to have an experience like that and everything about your life not change in some way. That said, how much of it is a result of the NDE is unclear and impossible to know. Question. Was the experience difficult to express in words? Answer. Yes. Though some of my experience was associated with visual sensation, which is easier to explain, the majority of it had to do with intuition and just a knowing. That's very hard to explain to someone who's never experienced a state where time and space doesn't exist. Question. How accurately do you remember the experience in comparison with other life events that occurred around the same time? Answer. I remember the experience more accurately. This experience has always been in the back of my mind. I tried to dismiss it at first, but it kept coming back. Knowing of its significance, I've tried to hold on to it as much as I can. Other experiences around that time just don't even come close to the NDE. Question: are there one or several parts of your experience that are especially meaningful or significant to you? Answer: it was all very meaningful, so it's really hard to single out one or the other, but I'd say that the unconditional love part is the most significant. That's nice. Question: do you have any psychic, non ordinary, or other special gifts after your experience that you did not have before the experience? Answer: no. Question: have you shared this experience with others? Answer: yes. I remember telling my friends about it a day or so afterwards. I think they thought I was crazy, or it was just as a result of the drug, but I knew what I experienced. I don't remember them being at all influenced by any of it. We were so young. I didn't tell any adults because of the drug part. Question: did you have any knowledge of near-death experiences prior to your experience? Answer: yes. I knew enough to understand that what had happened to me was probably an NDE. I think it was the light at the end of the tunnel thing that set it off. It just seemed so cliche, almost humorous. I couldn't tell you for certain if my previous knowledge of that created that experience or not. It's a chicken or the egg thing. That said, I don't believe that it did. Question: what did you believe about the reality of your experience shortly after it happened? Answer: experience was probably real. Part of me knew it was real, but my rational mind was trying to play devil's advocate. I was so shaken by the whole experience of the NDE and the mushroom trip that it took a while to process it. Question: what do you believe about the reality of your experience now? Answer: experience was definitely real. I'm aware of confirmation bias, and I've certainly researched other NDEs and have been validated that we share similar experiences. However, I have a deep understanding without any of that. What I experienced was real. I don't need to convince anyone of that. End quote. End questions. And that was a great experience. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you for sharing that with us, and your details and your insight I thought were really very interesting. Thank you guys for listening too. Have a great day.